Is a World Cup boycott possible? Columbus Crew and Sporting KC get their head coaches, and we look at the 2026 football calendar. That and more on today's edition of Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround, the show where we dot the map of the American soccer landscape. My name, Robert Kerr, local soccer guy. And to my side, Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. Great to see you, partner.
Yeah.
And commiserations to all those folks out there who today's their first day off of winter vacation.
Yeah, that's some people back to work. Lots of kids back to school. I imagine that was a thing in your house, Rob. And it's so cold, and you got to go outside and get to school somehow. That's not my situation. I'm not cold. I will go outside. It'll be nice outside. I'm still in Puerto Rico. So anyway, we're back, and we get to talk about soccer. We get to look ahead to 2026.
Welcome on board to our members that joined over the weekend since Friday. The Soccer Enjoyer, $2 Soccer, and Eric Allen, new to the channel, new MK Ultras. Shout out to you. Thank you for supporting the show here. And shout out to our 6,700 plus subscribers. We got a nice boost over the holidays. So shout out to all of our new viewers there. And it was also pointed out, we haven't heralded it very much, but yesterday was the MK Derby.
It was, yeah, such as that is. I mean, we don't spend a lot of time talking about English football on this show because that's not our focus. But Rob is, unfortunately, a Liverpool supporter, and I, for some godforsaken reason, chose Fulham as my team. So we were playing each other this weekend, and it was entertaining to say the least. I mean, I certainly enjoyed the way it ended, Rob.
Yeah, the ending was, I think, the entire story. Some doldrum-style football for Liverpool still, trying to get blood from a stone to get the new players to embed and play properly. But it made me think about expectations. Like here, I think Liverpool are playing like absolute crap and don't look like a very competitive team and don't look worthy of accolades. And here they are in fourth. So what does everyone else in the table feel like below them?
Yeah. How do Manchester United fans feel today, Rob? Quite a day for them. I woke up to the news that Ruben Amorim got sacked. So what's next for the Red Devils, your noted rival?
Yeah, noted rivalry indeed. And that's a great segue on today's show. We are going to talk about brand new coaches in the USA, specifically Major League Soccer, with Columbus Crew and Sporting KC seeming to have nailed their head coaching hire, or at least got somebody in the door. We'll see how those all play out and what the reactions are from those fan bases. We're also going to talk about the 2026 calendar. Lots on the way in the next 360 so days. And then we're going to talk about the world events that transpired over the weekend. Different world than when we did our show on Friday. We're going to talk about the possibilities of a possible boycott for World Cup 2026. So without much further ado, are we going to have to dip into that then?
I think we are. I'm exasperated about it, but yeah, we have to. Let's not pretend. We can't put our heads in the sand, Rob, so let's do it.
One more way to delay it. Support us online. We actually had a hit Instagram with travel football fans. So support us on the social medias at Kickaround on all the social media platforms. We Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and the Blue Sky. So check us out over there. And if you want to write us a note, we got some nice notes over the last week or so over the holidays. People had a little bit of time. morningkickaround@gmail.com. And also business inquiries. If you've got a business or an idea for a business that might want to sponsor this show, morningkickaround@gmail.com is a great way to get a hold of the show. All right, delayed long enough. Let's get into it. Long balls here on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Welcome on in. It is Monday morning on Morning Kickaround. I'm Robert. He's Jason. The world is a different place than last time when we were on the air. A massive world event transpired over the weekend. We should talk about, is a boycott of USA in World Cup 2026 a possibility?
Okay, I'm going to say, not going to bury the lead. No, a boycott of the World Cup in 2026 is not a possibility. And I say that not to be cynical because I want there to be a boycott, but to say that the power dynamics involved in all of this pretty much assure that there won't be a boycott. We didn't get a boycott of Qatar 2022, which there was a lot of noise leading up into that tournament about the way that Qatar was building their tournament, the indentured servitude that a lot of people, foreign nationals in Qatar, were forced into. Look, there's always going to be something ugly about a big tournament. There's always going to be something ugly about the way these things come off. I mean, you can go back to 2014 and the way that Brazil cleared the favelas ahead of. They had the Olympics also in that time, and that same era, and they were doing things that lots of people in the international community were saying, "Hey, this isn't cool. Why are you doing this? Let's boycott." Now, this is a little bit different. What happened on Saturday, whatever you think of the action, and I certainly have my opinions. You may have seen them on my social media. I mean, I'm in Puerto Rico right now. I'm as close to Venezuela as people can get in American-controlled territory, right? And one of the impacts of what happened on Saturday was flights were canceled. Every flight was canceled out of San Juan, I'm assuming into San Juan as well, on Saturday around the action that the United States decided to take in capturing the president of Venezuela. Like that is a real world impact on American citizens, right? So you can't avoid like thinking about this. And then of course my world is soccer, my world is football. We're supposed to be welcoming the world to a party this summer. Now, Canada and Mexico are also involved, by the way. And of course, in the aftermath of what the United States decided to do with Maduro, the president of the United States also referenced Mexico and the president of Mexico and the way Mexico operates and drug cartels and things, which is nominally the reason for what's going on with Venezuela, right? So this is all wrapped up together. Like we can't pretend that this isn't out there. And I think it's justified for people who look at what happened with Russia getting internationally banned from competing in football, who look at the way people talked about Qatar, that looked at the way people talk about events like this and some of the bad things that come with them. It's justified on some level to say, should there be a boycott? Now, there's a real world reality, right? There's a real world thing that basically indicates I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think you can laugh off the idea that people are going to talk about a boycott. I don't think that you can laugh it off as if, that's not a thing. No, it could be sorry, I just knocked over my camera getting so excited. It could absolutely be a thing. If, again, is there reason to ask if we should talk about it? Absolutely. I don't know that it goes past that.
Yeah, when we talk about all the crazy things that have happened over the last few years or so, and you referenced, there was, I think, almost a bigger widespread appeal for there to be some sort of action or boycott in Qatar 4 years ago, and ultimately
what was at play? Look, let's again, I'm gonna pull back the curtain a little bit on my thinking, and let's just be blunt about this. That was the Western world. Right? Yeah. The Western world looking at a country that does things decidedly differently. Now, look, I do think it's a slippery slope to say, well, you just have to accept all the cultures. That's their culture. Accept them. That's how they do it. If there is victimization, if people are being exploited, if people are dying because of the conditions in building the stadiums for Qatar, then it's absolutely right to say maybe there should be action here internationally. Maybe these countries shouldn't play. Maybe if you are Western or otherwise a country who claims you care about human rights, you shouldn't be participating in that. Now, obviously, here we have military action, unilateral military action against a sovereign nation, right? And without getting into, I'm not a geopolitical expert by any means, but I do read, I do know what's going on. I am the child of a military officer, so I have a particular interest in these things, whether I'm an expert or not. And to me, there are lines that you're not supposed to cross that might have been crossed. So when people ask, should there be a boycott, I think we have to take that seriously.
So per a Harvard article about bans and whatnot for this sort of situation, the only countries that have been banned due to conflicts are Germany and Japan shortly after 1945. And then recently, Russia has actually been banned twice. For other reasons, in the last 10 years, Kuwait, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Congo have all been banned. And then for outside of even more removed reasons from conflict, Mexico back in the day were banned for using overage players in a youth tournament. Chile was banned for player misconduct, and Myanmar for an unjustified withdrawal from a qualifying round. South Africa excluded for apartheid, and Yugoslavia excluded during conflicts during the breakup of that nation. So
Look, and again,
there is precedence for teams being banned, but for military actions, it's a short list.
No, for military actions is a short list. For again, what I think, and again, I'm just talking about the real politic element of this, right? I'm not calling for a ban. I mean, I'm not calling for a boycott, rather, right? I have very complicated feelings around all of this. I'm a soccer fan, right? I am a soccer fan. I want the World Cup in my country. I want to be able to enjoy that tournament. I want this to be a celebration of a thing I absolutely love, that I work in every single day of my life, centers around this sport. Of course, I would want that to happen. But then again, you get into what this is, what it represents. And if there is, and again, just to talk about the reality of it, if there is no real momentum, right? If you look at South America, for example, let's imagine that if this is going to happen, it has to come out of South America, because this is where the action happened, right? Venezuela is a sovereign nation, a member of the South American community. Does a South American nation have to take the lead on a boycott in order for there to actually be anything? And you look at the governments of South America, and many of them have put out statements regarding the action the United States took to get Maduro. And Brazil is run by a left-leaning leftist president, and he's very much against it. Now, could Brazil boycott the World Cup? Again, I found it very difficult to believe it will extend that far. If it's Argentina might be the leading nation of world of football in South America. They're the defending champions, right? But they have a leader who is very much on the side of Donald Trump and the current United States government, because they bailed him out, because he and leans in that direction politically and in terms of nationalist ideas and things like that. So, the politics are going to play a major role in who actually has the momentum behind him to do any of this, right? But you look at, if there was a consensus, right? There was a consensus that apartheid was wrong. And so South Africa got banned from certain events, because as long as the government was enacting that policy, then you can't let them participate in the world, in the sporting world that we all think of as like a bringing us together, unifying a world. Does this action, illegal or not, again, and power matters, not UN laws, but illegal or not, does this action rise to the level of a lot of countries going, oh my God, I can't believe they did that? Again, because the justification on the people who say this is totally okay is the ends justify the means. You have taken down an illegitimate president who was involved in narcotics trafficking, who was a dictator, who jailed dissidents, who all those things, right? That there is obviously an argument for taking down Maduro as a good thing, regardless of how it was done. So the issue of a boycott then only comes from we object to you, to you violating the sovereignty of Venezuela, which again, people would say, well, but that's not the real president. He stole the election. It's not happening. Boycott's not happening.
Yeah, because you're trying to see who would possibly, call for this, and you listed off like Brazil, Argentina seem unlikely. Maybe a European FA. Does the English FA step up and say, we're not sending the team or anything like that? You think back in Qatar, they were going to wear the rainbow armbands, and they stepped that back, and there was a lot of things stated ahead of the tournament that once the tournament happened, they didn't necessarily happen. Would it have to be fans? Is there enough of a global fan collective to say we're not traveling? But there's enough people interested and willing to go.
That's what we think, right? And FIFA is saying that the ticket demand is off the charts and they're fine. Now, again, when we talked to Travel Football Fan on our last show, he outlined, but if everybody wants to go to Portugal, Spain, or whatever, it wasn't Portugal, Spain, but I can't remember.
Colombia.
Portugal, Colombia. If everybody wants to go to Portugal, Colombia, but nobody wants to go to some of these other games, then how can you claim the demand is all that high and that you can justify these ticket prices? But that's also, again, wrapped up in this is the politics of the moment that have nothing to do with Maduro and Venezuela, in the sense that the government of the United States is engaging in restricting travel from foreign nationals of certain countries. They are engaged in ejecting a lot of people from the country and from World Cup participating nations, right? So now you have this, that there was already a bubbling sense that this is not a good World Cup, or this is not a World Cup that the United States should be hosting because of those things. And then you throw this on top of it. Could it be the tipping point? Again, I don't think so. If only because, again, power matters here. And ultimately, no one is going to call the biggest military power on the planet to account for what they've done. All of this stuff is the honor system. Do you agree that we should not execute the kind of action the United States did against Venezuela? And everybody at the UN went, yeah, we don't think you should be able to do that. And Donald Trump and the current regime of the United States says, we don't care about those rules. Those rules don't apply to us. Or if they do, we're rejecting them and doing whatever we want. And again, they're going to test whether there's any appetite internationally to really push back. And even though the World Cup, boycotting the World Cup is a relatively low stakes thing compared to, say, military action against the United States of America, it is still so hard to sell for people to say, we're going to not play in this thing that we care so much about.
Yeah, I mean, how much has been put into it? It's that fallacy you mentioned every now and again. But we've put so much into that. How can we not actually execute and participate at this rate after everything that's already been put into it? Can the world, or can even a collective, put the brakes on and take a U-turn at this stage? I see a comment from a viewer, Andrew, saying that he's in Colombia now, just a drive away from Venezuela. If you could give any sort of update of the vibes or anything that you've seen out there that looks any different than it did, last week down there in Colombia, be interested to get your take on there. PSU saying, FIFA said that there was 150 million ticket applications, and refer back to that Travel Football Fan conversation from Friday. Like,
context matters.
Yeah, what does that actually mean? Are 150 million different people trying to come here for the tournament?
Or trying to go to games, right? Because obviously a lot of those people would be U.S. based, but are there 150? Is that a real number in the sense that there is a demand across a vast number of people, or is it a lot of people applying for is it a smaller number of people applying for a lot of tickets? Right?
Yeah.
And again, some of that stuff about how will these tickets be distributed? Travel Football Fan, sent out a warning to people: be careful about people saying I can get you tickets or secondary market things, because nobody currently has been awarded tickets. Like, it just hasn't happened yet. So again, all of this is just, it's all vaporware. Like, it's all just, it's talk is cheap, right? Saying, oh, there's 150 million applications. Okay, again, but if you're not giving us details on who those people are, where they come from, what it looks like, we don't know. It's all very opaque right now.
It's definitely interesting here. Andrew replied in the chat. It's all about context, and how we interpret all this information in these events is all very contextual to where the news is coming. Andrew says he's in Calcutta, a border town, and there's widespread celebration here. Can't imagine Colombia boycotting.
Well, again, and that's the thing. Okay, so I don't know about the politics of Colombia. I'm not an expert on that, and I'll defer to Andrew. But clearly, nobody liked Nicolas Maduro. Like, people did not like Nicolas Maduro. I mean, especially if you're a neighbor, or if you're a Venezuelan who saw him as a dictator who was heavy-handed in everything he did and punished people, and it was a terrible oppression was a fact of life in Venezuela, right? That is obviously at play here. And so anybody who ponders a boycott has to couch it in the United States violated international law. The United States violated Venezuela's sovereignty, and that's why we're doing this. And then they will be accused of, you twist it around, and now, you were okay with the narco trafficking dictator being in charge and oppressing his people. What are you? And again, it's a trap. It's a trap for everybody.
Yeah, the spin zone is well crafted here in this instance and seemingly always. But I found a website, gameofthepeople.com. It lists 6 reasons to possibly boycott the World Cup in the United States. This was written previous to the weekend, but it does mention the matter at hand. 1, ticket prices. 2, 48 teams. 3, USA versus the world. Possibility of civil disturbances. 5, America could actually be at war, which it is now. And then 6 is FIFA's behavior.
But see, here's the thing again, Robert. This is the double speak and the mind games. Is the United States at war? If we don't send troops, can you call it a war? This is why maybe congressional approval wasn't needed for the president to do what he did against Maduro. So, as long as they say, well, it's not really a war, then that kind of avoids that problem, again, sort of legally in this country. And again, this is not what we do, right? We're not analyzing the politics of the moment. We're not analyzing the relationship between the United States and Venezuela or the U.S. and the rest of the world community, right? We're here to talk about football, talk about soccer. But the problem is now these things are all very much wrapped up, and they were before, but it's now so obvious in your face. And let's just say, again, for anybody who just would prefer that we not do stuff like this, whether you wanted Maduro out or not, if you just prefer that the United States not involve itself in stuff like this is now another tough pill to swallow when it comes to the World Cup coming to our country this summer. And maybe you can compartmentalize, right? And I know, a guy I'm very well acquainted with, Alexi Lawless, is over there on the X machine saying, "Oh, calm down, chill out. We had World Cups in fascist countries before, right? Like, what are you talking about?" But man, like, at some point you have to figure out where your line is, and we'll see. I mean, I know a lot of our viewers, a lot of the ultras have said, I don't know if I can really engage in the World Cup, and that sucks, right? That's such a terrible thing.
Yeah, and I felt that way about just about every World Cup since Brazil, about hesitating, about being enthusiastic about the event, and once the ball kicked off, those things sort of evaporated and we watched the games, because it is the thing that we look forward to the most. And it is the pinnacle of the thing that we spend hours every day talking and discussing and thinking about. And so, yeah, the mental gymnastics and the compartmentalization of our interests in the world game is very difficult. And throughout history, it's always been, difficult to separate sport and politics. But now when presidents are, on the trophy lift stage at competitions, winning awards and being involved directly in the main organizing events up until this point, it's literally, there's no separation to even throw that compartmentalization barrier in the way there. So tricky times, and having to do a bit of a limbo here, but curious to see if anything more comes from this, and if there really will be any fervor for a boycott. I mean, it's just about 48 hours or so since this, and I did some searching to see if there was any official statements from any FAs or anything. Haven't seen anything up until this point, so we're just speculating and reacting at this point.
Yeah, and that's all we can do, right? That's all we can do. And my sense is that we will continue on the path. The buildup will continue. Again, we'll see what FIFA actually does with the tickets, and how many people get their hands on them and what that looks like. And we'll continue to follow that with Travel Football Fan. But again, I don't expect that we're going to see anything approaching a boycott.
Shout out to everyone tuning in right now. Thank you for all the comments adding to our conversation here this morning. A shout out to those viewing from outside of the American borders. William Mera 88 saying he's watching from Ecuador and likes our projects content, talking about new stadiums and whatnot. And we will talk about the 2026 soccer calendar, because obviously we have the World Cup, but there's a whole lot going on. So we're kind of going to lay out the details of the timeline of 2026 ahead. But next up, we're going to talk about 2 new American coaches taking positions in the American First Division. But before that, I want to say thank you for supporting all of our subscribers. Over 6,000. We're creeping up on 7,000 subscribers on the channel. Shout out to everyone supporting us on social media at Kickaround across the various social media platforms. And ultimately, thank you to the Ultras for being financial backers of the program.
All you guys are investors in the future of Morning Kickaround and in what we're going to do in 2026. And we appreciate every single one of you.
All right, we're going to catch our breath and come right back with today's hot topic. We're going to talk MLS coaching hires here on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Today's hot topic here on Morning Kickaround: 2 MLS coaching positions filled over the weekend. Columbus Crew hire Henrik Rydstrom, and according to reports, Sporting KC are about to name Raphael Wicke as the club's next head coach.
Yeah, so let's start with the guy in Columbus. By the way, I said this when we were getting ready for the show today, Rob, and my apologies if anybody's watching on the what is it, vertical? We're going to look weird here, but we wanted to get this on screen because this is important stuff. Big day for umlauts in Major League Soccer managerial hires. Now, this one is official, Henrik Rydstrom. The other one, Raphael Wicke, is not official as far as I'm aware. It might go to official today or maybe even during the show. But let's start with Rydstrom, 2-time Swedish League champion at Malmo, back-to-back championships, actually. This is the thing that kind of came out, which I found interesting. Holds a master's degree in literature and has apparently written a Marxist. I don't know how to do write papers on literature, Rob, but apparently he wrote some paper about a Swedish novel through a Marxist lens. So if that tells you something about his politics, I don't know.
So he's more of a high-minded guy.
Smart guy, got that master's degree while he was played for one club. I think made like 800 appearances for one club. And I read that his number was retired. And as far as the person who was talking about this could tell, that's not a thing that's ever been done before or since in Swedish football. Like, he is literally that level of a legend at his former club. I think it's like, I didn't pull that up because it's not Malmo. It's not where he's been playing or where he's been coaching. He played at a different club. Kalmar. Okay, I guess it's Kalmar. Maybe he did coach at Kalmar before moving on to Malmo. So that's where he is a legend. Known for a possession-based approach and relationism tactics. Now,
yeah, let's break that down. Relationism. That's not low block. It's not pressing. What is that?
No. Well, okay. So first of all, possession-based approach. That does line up with how Wilfred Nancy ran the Columbus Crew during his time as head coach, where he was lauded for the way that the Crew played. Obviously winning an MLS Cup, but also just I can't think of many MLS managers who got as much love from a tactical lens as Wilfred Nancy. Right? Do you know of anybody who we were talking? Oh, I mean, I guess a little bit Jason Kreis when he was at RSL and he was playing the 4-4-2 diamond back in the years that RSL was winning the league. Now, that was a very different era of MLS, and the talent level has gone dramatically upward. And I do think that, we tend to celebrate more possession-based approaches than the alternative, right? Like, in general, soccer fans think of possession-based football as better, as more
aesthetically
advanced.
pleasing.
Well, yeah, it could be that, but more advanced, right? Like, you're not taking the easy way out, which is defend and counter. You're actually going for it. Okay, so and we've got our guy Luke, by the way, who is an ultra and a Columbus Crew fan. Crew opinion here: his style will continue Nancy's work, as will his politics. His strong, abrasive character will be a shock, though. So this is what I don't know about. Luke's apparently done some research and knows a little bit more about how Henrik Rydstrom carries himself. The relationism part, again, we're not going to spend an hour on relationism tactics on this show, but there is a way of playing, right? And we can use Pep Guardiola as a counter to this idea. Pep Guardiola, or use Pep Guardiola's positional approach, which lots of people know about, as a way to explain relationism. So positional play is your area is your area, right? And everybody's got their little zones that they are playing in, and then you relate to one another based on your zones. Now, and that's very simple. That's not, again, it's a flowing game. It's this complicated stuff. There's 10 people, 11 if you want to include the goalkeeper, making decisions in every moment on every team. And so it's complicated to say that, it's reductive to say that it's just you have your zone, you play in your zone. But relationism is about players playing in relation to one another more than thinking about this is my area of the field. It's less about the breaking down of the field and more about breaking down of the team as a unit. And I compared it in a very reductive way to Rob to sort of the way a flock of birds will move, right? Everybody moves together. We're not like one bird over here, one bird over there, one bird. No, everybody moves together. And there's a lot about tilting the field. If you're a little bit aware of what's coming out of Brazil, Fernando Diniz has played this way as well and kind of got some attention because of the way he was doing it at Fluminense. Now he was also the Brazil manager for a hot minute off of that success, and that didn't work out too well for him. And now he's at Vasco da Gama. But the relationism is a tactical approach, and it's a defined one. And it's going to be interesting to see, how Rydstrom's approach kind of does, what it does to the crew, and whether or not, again, there are enough players who will work within that system to make it effective. But it is, to Issa Tall's credit, and he is the man who made the decision for the crew, as far as we're aware, the general manager of the Columbus Crew. This is not a shy hire. This is not, we're just going to go status quo, or somebody who knows the league, or we're going to make it simple on ourselves and our players. This is choosing someone whose tactics are a higher level of difficulty to make work right.
Yeah, and he's a winner too. I mean, he's not coming up here like trying to sow his oats as a head coach or manager. This guy, he's a winner back-to-back times in a league that is very competitive, obviously, and it's a higher level. He is not wet behind the ears in any sort of a way when it comes to the job. And it's not like that. They must check a box for some fans. And then also he's not like a retread. I know that there were some people throwing out some names that weren't necessarily super exciting. And then I'm also glad that the jokes of Wilfred Nancy being able to come back from Celtic before they hired a manager are kaputs as well, because those were getting a little tired because, Nancy's struggling over there in Scotland, but don't bring him back after that.
Yeah, no, I know. I think, and I don't, it is funny to imagine the crew parting ways with Wilfred Nancy because he went to take the Celtic job, then it not working out. And does he still have a job? Because they got beat by Rangers, and I don't know that he's holding on by much more than a fingernail at this point. But anyway, it would have been funny, but yeah, obviously never really realistic. I don't think Issa Tall was like, oh yeah, we can't wait to bring back the guy who walked out on us, even though he didn't really, he wasn't doing the crew dirty. He was taking an opportunity, which the crew always knew he might do because he is European and because most coaches see MLS as a stepping stone to Europe, not the other way around. It would have been interesting. But yeah, what I like about this, without knowing whether or not Rydstrom is going to be a success, right? What I like about this is that the crew are trying to define themselves in part by how they play. And a lot of MLS teams rarely do this. MLS teams mostly go, okay, who's the best name we can get, or who's the cheapest name we can get, who is also kind of successful, or who has maybe sold us on his idea, and that's going to change the way we play. The crew are saying, well, we actually want to continue along and move forward from Wilfred Nancy and still stay within that realm of how we play and not go to somebody else just because they have a name or they have some MLS history. So I imagine that the short list that Issa Tall was looking at was a lot of guys who play like what Rydstrom does or want their teams to play in a certain way, a la Wilfred Nancy.
And I'm sure now that we're talking it out, this is like a huge upgrade, really. You think about this gentleman, Rydstrom, has accomplished a lot more than Nancy had when Nancy came into the fold. And
Absolutely.
obviously Crew fans like Nancy because they found success and they kind of separated themselves from the league and their style of play, and they won a lot of games. But I mean, this guy is coming in with more pedigree and more success. And then, yeah, like you said, maybe progressing Columbus's play even more. Not like, hey, let's swing back to a Caleb Porter or another MLS name that's familiar or anything like that. They were not shy, which is exciting to see. That's also part of the progression of Major League Soccer on a whole, because you'd say in times past like this, maybe, oh, let's get a guy that knows the league. Let's get a guy that knows the club.
Yeah. And there is, I mean, look, I think it's been a while, but MLS is pretty clearly out of the it's only a retread league, or it's only American coaches, or it's only coaches who, know the American player. Look, there was a time when I was on board with the idea that foreign managers struggle too much in MLS to make it worth it to bring them in. Right. And that's because of things like the salary budget and the rules around who you can sign. And how many coaches have we heard come into MLS? Frank de Boer maybe did this. Ruud Gullit definitely did it. I know that's a different era, but Ruud Gullit definitely did it when he was in Los Angeles. He's like, we need a left back. Sign me a left back. And the front office is like, no.
We have to jump through a complicated spider web. Didn't you know that?
Well, we can't actually do that. Like, that's not how this league works. And then those managers struggle mightily to adjust to that idea. And man, I think the biggest thing for me is that so many of these MLS teams have evolved and changed and gotten better at giving the support. And really, this is across the globe kind of development, but it of course is it's a little bit more complicated in MLS because of the salary budgets, right? But like, for example, Ruben Amorim gets fired today by Manchester United. And you're in this situation of going, okay, well, the reason he gets fired is because he spoke out directly about his lack of control over some things that would have traditionally been falling at the feet of the manager of a football club in England. And now you have a director of football, and now you have a technical director, and now you have the recruitment piece of the organization, and that doesn't fall on the manager anymore. And because Robert Amorim decided to throw a tantrum, he got fired. Whereas this is just how it works now. Now, obviously, there's ways to do it right, ways to do it wrong, and you need to have clear organizational responsibilities. Otherwise, it gets real messy and really bad. And I think that's where United is right now. But in the case of Major League Soccer, if you have those defined departments, if you have a general manager who knows what they're doing, or a director of football, or a team president, or a president of soccer, which is the title of the guy down in Houston, Pat Onstad, his title is the president of soccer at the Houston Dynamo. If you have somebody who knows what they're doing, the manager has to be complementary. The manager? Nobody comes into MLS and makes all the decisions. That's not how it works. You've got to support them, and you've got to be able to find ways, even when the rules don't allow you to sign just a new player because you need a new player. Find ways to get them players to make their systems work.
Before we move on to the second coaching hire of the moment, Riverside Groves, his interpretation of relationism equals jazz minus positional play equals classical scripted, which is an interesting
I think that's
take on it.
Yeah, relationism is more jazz, and positional play is more classical scripted. I don't think that's a minus sign in there. I think he's just trying to separate the two things. So yeah,
fair enough.
Relationism is a little bit more, you're free to do some things on your own within our plan to, say, tilt the field, right? And again, it's a lot more complicated than that, and we're not going to be the best people for breaking down all of the tactical nuances of Henrik Rydstrom, but I do think it gives you a sense of what might be coming for the Columbus Crew.
Don't want to forget about this before we move on. Mr. B throwing in a $10 super thanks. So thank you so much for contributing and supporting the show.
In Albuquerque. That's our man in Albuquerque. Shout out. Which, actually funny that the only scarf I have with me is my New Mexico, my Albuquerque Soul scarf, actually, which is the precursor of New Mexico United. So shout out to Bob for giving us a little extra script today.
So moving to the middle of the country in Major League Soccer, Sporting KC finalizing a deal to name Raphael Wicke the club's next head coach. And for those familiar with that name, he had a less than successful stint with the Chicago Fire and came here to our land as the U.S. U17 coach a few years back. He's a Swiss international during his playing days, finished his career playing in the MLS with Chivas USA before returning to Switzerland to begin his coaching career.
Yeah, the immediate thing that smacks people in the face with this one is retread, right? Oh, this is a retread. Look, he was at I look at those years that he was at the Chicago Fire. Now, look, I know teams won the league. Like a team won the league in 2020, a team won the league in 2021. Some teams managed to thrive during that period, but I think the Fire were pretty destitute at the time in terms of the roster that they had available for Raphael Wicke. I don't want to say that he's going to be a success at Sporting, and Sporting is a club notorious right now for being one of the I don't think least ambitious is the right word. They have spent some money, they have been aggressive in certain areas, but I think the general sense is they're not going to be able to compete, certainly with Miami, certainly with LAFC, certainly with Seattle, certainly with, the bigger market clubs. So he's taking over a job that is difficult, right? This is the degree of difficulty to win in sport at Sporting is higher than it would be even at Chicago right now, right? And we saw what Greg Berhalter did, just barely made the playoffs in his first season. That's seen as a big step forward for that team. So I don't know, right? I don't know. Wicke did have success in Switzerland. You see it there. He was at Young Boys. He won the league, 59% win percentage. Now, I think it's context matters. Young Boys is one of the richer clubs in Switzerland. They have money to throw around, and they've been consistently in European competition, which helps a lot. And they don't have the restrictions, the same ones exactly that Major League Soccer does when it comes to the roster. You do have a roster undergoing a transformation. You do have Jovalic, who I like a lot. Got to get him the ball. He'll score some goals. Manu Garcia, Daniel Shallowy is still there. Jake Davis is still there. But, man, they do have some holes for sure.
If we have some Chicago Fire supporters in the chat right now, I'd love to get your take on Wicke. Was he not the best coach, not the best motivator, or was he just short on resources on the field? Was his squad just not good enough to get wins, or was it his tactics, or a little bit of both? I imagine it's probably a little bit of both. I have to knock off some cobwebs to remember exactly what his style was, but I just remember that those Fire teams being very underwhelming and very underpowered. But like you said, they had Jovalic in Sporting KC, which, kind of a forgotten man since departing LA Galaxy on a national perception base. I'm curious if Wicke can invigorate him and get him to scoring goals like he was so well for Galaxy when they were successful.
Yeah, man. Well, we know he's a talented player, right? And I don't think there's any doubt about that. And he was one of those first interleague transfers, the cash for trade transfers was Jovalic. So they made an investment. They saw a player that was available. The Galaxy needed budget help because they had boxed themselves in a bit after that championship season, and Sporting made a move. And I think that there is enough there that Sporting should be a contender to make the playoffs, right? And of course, this is MLS, so that's pretty much what you need to do to keep your job. Now, I do think there are some ambitious clubs who won't see 8th place or 9th place as good enough in 2026. But I don't think that's Sporting Kansas City, at least not right now, because, again, this is a dramatic change from the last 15 years with one guy in charge. Now, Peter Vermees did eventually kind of step aside from the front office responsibilities in order to let somebody help him with those things. But he was the man. Like, he was the furniture. He was the institution. He was the college football coach who had the statue in front of the stadium while he was still coaching games. That's the level that Peter Vermees mattered to Kansas City. They made a big decision to fire him last year. I'm not saying it was the wrong one, but they made a big decision to fire him last year. And this is an interesting choice for the guy that's supposed to pick up the baton from a club legend.
Looking at the comments here, Riverside Grove, is Ricky out for another season? Yes, that was confirmed over the weekend. Ricky Puig out for another year. And I mean, he was always, I don't know if he was ever really in the mix to get into the Spanish World Cup team, but obviously no World Cup for him and no regular season for him again for a second year, which is very disappointing from a Galaxy standpoint, and just a neutral. I consider myself an MLS neutral, and he was a very fun player to watch. And his what is it now? The 2024 season for him was a blast. And unfortunately, that was a lightning in a bottle that we're not going to see for a long time, maybe ever. And another shout out to Bob in New Mexico for that super thanks. Really appreciate that. You can hit that button underneath this window to share your super thanks, become a member, or even subscribe here. You can subscribe right here, like I said, or follow us along on social media at Kickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, and all the others. I'm going to try to be a little bit more intentional about the Reddit. We have a morning Kickaround subreddit, and sparsely populated, and looking to fill that out a little bit more.
Somebody maybe planted a flag for us over there. Is that what happened? I'm not even really up to speed on all of that. I just know that there's a space, and it is, look, we've got the Discord. That is a beautiful little community. If you join up and become an ultra, you get access to the Discord, and you can be part of those conversations. But man, yeah, putting stuff up over at the Reddit, talking about some of the show culture, conversing back and forth about the stuff that we're getting into. That sounds like a great place for that as well. So yeah, encourage that. Sure, why not?
All right, we got one more segment on today's live show. We're going to catch our breath and come right back and kind of lay out the timeline for football in 2026 here on Morning Kickaround. We're right back here on Morning Kickaround 2026. Huge year for soccer in the United States, obviously with the World Cup coming to our shores. But we want to take a moment and kind of look at the timeline of 2026, because there's a number of different competitions happening and a much different Major League Soccer format with the league taking a break during the World Cup. So what do we got on screen here?
Yeah, this is just a little rough sketch. I mean, I know there are various articles out there with notable dates. MLS has their own, which is very MLS focused, although they did throw in, I think, the NWSL final and maybe kick off to theirs. We did this off the top of the head this morning, so if we're missing anything, definitely let us know. Throw them in there. So January 31st, USL Super League resumes. That's the end of this month. That's the top division of USL women's soccer. Obviously, they're playing on a European calendar, whatever you want to call that, like whatever you choose to call that, that's what they're doing. And so they'll resume their season after their winter break at the end of the month. February 21st, MLS opening day. I think training camps are like, and I spelled opening day wrong in that third one, man. Those typos. Opening day for MLS comes after training camp, which is beginning like soon, very soon. I think we're just days away maybe from players getting together. And obviously there's you have CONCACAF Champions Cup and things like that. I didn't put those dates in there. March 6th, ignore the typo, USL Championship opening day, USL Championship back on the field. And Rob, I mean, I think we should highlight that for a moment because we still don't have a CBA. John Morrissey, incredible writer, incredible reporter on USL stories, USL Tactics. He does stuff for Backheeled as well. He wrote on his website, USL Tactics, a little bit of an update on the CBA situation. And there's nothing new in terms of negotiations. There's nothing new in terms of movement around the bargaining table, but he did sort of outline some of the things that are there. And the players are even willing to maybe be a little bit more flexible on how things move forward with stuff like minimum salaries and things like that. And he outlines very specifically in ways that I think are very easy to understand why it's so complicated, because the USL league office is an independent company, right? An independent entity that scoops up all the profits from selling television rights and selling the rights of the league to EA for games and things like that. And none of that goes down to the teams. There's no revenue sharing. This is not a collective group that says, all right, we're going to make all this money together and then we're going to spread it out. This is the league saying, we're the organizers. We scoop up all the money and you go operate your league under our umbrella. And that's what's going on with that. And again, with the impending launch of the next season, which is supposed to be the season before the season, if you know what I'm talking about, Rob, then this is a big deal.
Yeah, so much to consider. One of our commenters saying that Colombia, their clubs in Colombia started their preseason or their training camps rather today. And I was looking at, and I think there's various camps starting here shortly stateside. You're talking about the USL CBA. Yeah, that's a hairy topic all on its own, right? And I suggest viewers check in on our interview with Connor Tobin on New Year Eve as the CBA was set to expire, and nothing new on that front as far as we can see. But I'm seeing in the chat, Nancy has been sacked.
Yes, I just caught that over on the socials. Tom Bogert saying that Wilfred Nancy has been sacked by as manager of Celtic. Not a surprise. Obviously, it's a mess. Celtic is a mess. But okay, that's an aside, and maybe we'll be talking about that down the line. After March 6th, we get March 7th, League One kickoff. I think if those dates aren't exactly accurate, it's that time zone. That time
first weekend of March.
And we do have NWSL that will kick off around that time, but I don't believe we have a schedule yet. So you could put March ? And NWSL will kick off. April 4th, Miami Freedom Park opens. I just put this on here because, look, it is a big project. We just talked about it on our last episode. Lionel Messi is going to be the guy that sort of christens this new building for Jorge Mas and Inter Miami. And I think the league will make a massive deal out of it on April 4th when they host Austin.
Before we move on from the new Miami stadium, do you think that the Inter Miami ownership will feel any pressure to outdo that like 30-meter tall statue of Messi that they had over in India?
I hope not, because that thing was hideous. And in general, statues don't end up looking very good. I mean, maybe they'll do a statue, but I hope it's not like that level of nonsensical. Let's just say it that way.
All right. So the next biggest date, jokes aside, the next biggest date to look at for 2026, Major League Soccer wasn't able to convert their calendar over to the European format. They had to push that back to 27. So there will be a break. And so May 25th through July 6th, Major League Soccer takes a World Cup pause.
Yeah, it's a significant pause. Now, it doesn't cover the entire World Cup because, as you can see there, the World Cup begins on June 11th and the World Cup final is on July 19th. So, and you look, the expectation that there will be a lot of MLS players involved when the World Cup reaches its final it's not very big. I mean, is Messi going to play? Will Argentina be there? Et cetera, et cetera. But so I think that for the most part, they're covering the parts that matter when it comes to their players being absent. But there is that thing about you're going to play games while people are talking about the World Cup, like maybe even the same day occasionally during the knockout phase. Like you're going to play games while the World Cup is going on. Like it's one thing, and people will always bring up like Brazil, right? Serie A and Brazil will play through international breaks occasionally. I think that happens. And people will bring that up, like, oh, MLS isn't the only league to play through international breaks. And you're like, yeah, sure. But it's a totally different thing to play during a World Cup that's happening in your own country. So, and I feel for MLS in the sense that they're boxed in with limited time to execute their season when the World Cup is going to eat up attention for more than a month.
If only they had been able to make a more decisive move to change their calendar, to make the switch to the European calendar this year. And they could have used this spring for my AI American Soccer Exhibition Tournament Extravaganza that I mentioned should be done, but that didn't happen, obviously. So they will change over in 2027. So this break, so there's a potential, for Inter Miami to be playing a Major League Soccer game the day before Messi participates in like a semifinal or a final or something like that, which is awkward and undermines the major part of Major League Soccer. Are you major if you are the B or the C on the sports rundown of the day.
But look, the other thing that you mentioned it, maybe they should have pulled the trigger on the calendar switch earlier. They wouldn't have had this issue, and they could have just timed it. Oh, we got a World Cup coming. We're just getting out of the way, and we're starting our new season in the fall. Maybe they should have done it. They obviously didn't do it. Whatever the lift was on getting owners to approve the calendar shift. But we know it'll never happen again. I mean, maybe there won't be another American World Cup for a very long time, but we at least now know that starting the following year, any summer tournament will not be played while MLS is still going through their season or in the middle of their season. So I guess that's a thing. And man, that is we'll be spending 2026 talking about a lot of other things. But as we get towards the back end of this calendar year, it will be fascinating to be talking about what MLS is going to try to do with their calendar swap, Rob, because that is huge.
Looking at our timeline of the year that's ahead of us, June 11th, World Cup begins, and the gargantuan 6-week tournament gets underway. Knockout rounds in June 28th. And to be honest, I mean, it says something about the teams that I support, but the group stage in tournaments in the past have usually been my favorite part. That's usually where people are expressing themselves, having fun, more fans from all the different countries are there. And that's the party part. And then usually the knockout rounds get very serious and everything tightens up a bit. So from June 11th to June 28th, the biggest, the girthiest part of the World Cup. July 19th there, shortly after Summer League season for our USL2 fans. July 19th, around the end of the Summer League season, which will play obviously during the World Cup. Will be the World Cup final on that July 19th.
They should. I'm not saying everybody needs to take a break. They USL2 and and NPSL and all those, they should be playing.
And then NWSL final in November, and then December, likely the last MLS Cup final scheduled
in December. Yeah, that's right. There's a big gap obviously between July and November, and other things will happen. And if you care about the League's Cup, MLS will try to pull that off during that window. And obviously there's a bunch of league games in other competitions. And yes, of course, we're a show that focuses on lower division soccer. You'll get the USL Championship. US Open Cup is also mixed in there. Obviously, it's a little bit different this year, and we spent some time on it and probably need to recap and review what's going on with the teams participating in the Open Cup in 2026. But yeah, there's a lot. It's a big calendar, and it would be a big calendar even if there wasn't a World Cup happening in the United States, Rob. But you throw that into the mix, and it's just there's so much stuff happening. It's going to be a wild ride, and I don't know that I'm ready for it, but it's sort of like a roller coaster where you're like, I don't know if I'm ready. Oh, okay, this is great. I think let's go.
Yeah, definitely a wild ride ahead of us, and I'm glad we were able to take a moment here while things are a little quieter to really kind of lay out what this roadmap of the year ahead will look like for all of us that are interested and invested in American soccer and just the game in general. With this news of Nancy being let go and Celtic that's kind of rumbling in the chat, we often, the way that YouTube works, like proposing things as a question in the title and, often hypothetical. But we had a video, a month or two ago when Nancy originally got the job. The title of our video back then was "Will Wilfred Nancy, improve the name brand recognition or improve the reputation of MLS coaching?" And I think we have a firm question or a firm answer on that one.
Okay, but this is more complicated. Again, I don't know. People are going to look right past this, and I don't blame you. It's a wins loss. It's a results based business. You get fired because you didn't win games. It doesn't matter if your team was quote unquote better. It doesn't matter if the stats suggest you were unlucky. If you lose, you get fired, especially at a club like Celtic. And yes, Celtic is a mess, well beyond Wilfred Nancy. People are talking about the board. We've already had one resignation from the board in recent weeks, not necessarily just because of Nancy, but sort of related to the fallout around Wilfred Nancy's hire and subsequent struggles. But if you look at the numbers and if you buy into any advanced analytics and the stats in the game, and you think that expected goals tell a story, I'm going to give you, I can pull it up on screen. Well, I can't, but I will tell you what the expected goals for Celtic were under Wilfred Nancy. And this, I don't have opponents. This is just the numbers. So, and I can give you the real world goals too. His first game, 1.86 expected goals for Celtic, 0.5 for the opponent. He lost that game 2-1. His second game in charge, 3.2 expected goals for Celtic, 1.45 for his opponent. They lost that game 2-1. So they created 3 really good, they should be goal level chances and didn't convert 2 of them and lost that game. His third match in charge, 4.72 to 0.91. Now they won that game 3-1. Then 3.83 to 1.09, winner 4-2 for Celtic. The last time out, really bad performance all around. They didn't score 0.6. 1.5 goals, expected goals in the last game out, the one that got him sacked against Rangers, 1.1 for Rangers. Overall, and again, it's individual games that matter, not the collective, but overall, 15.72 expected goals for Celtic. They scored 10. The opponent, 6.45 expected. They scored 11. That is some epic bad luck, some epic poor finishing, some epic letdown for Wilfred Nancy based on his team's inability to use, and I'm not saying again, individual decisions, 22 players, permutations on permutations on permutations. He didn't make them better in expected goals every single time out. That's sometimes down to his players and the decisions that they make. But again, a coach gets the blame when his team either loses or wins. And in this case, he gets the blame for the losses, despite the fact that the way his team was playing, in part because of his direction, had them better in almost every game they played in terms of expected goals. So to have it break out where he just didn't get the goals and now is fired, sacked, and probably going to struggle to find his next job anywhere but maybe lower divisions in France, I feel for Wilfred Nancy. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been fired. I just feel for him.
Yeah, but he like you said, he entered into a storm, took the job when the club was in a very bad place, almost as like a symptom rather than the cause of all this. And it got so bad on the finishing. I watched highlights of a game. It was like 5-6 minute highlight reel that was only of Celtic misses in one game.
That's so funny. That's
like
so
a whole
crazy.
game's worth of highlights of only Celtic misses, of like wide open one-on-one chances. Like, it wasn't like Nancy came in there and just made them all forget how to play, but these players just weren't finishing, and bad luck. And the name of that video we made about Nancy, can Wilfred Nancy make Europe respect MLS coaches? I'd say we got our...
Well, okay, but again, this is why this game is so fascinating to me. And I'm not going to blame anybody, especially Celtic fans who go, MLS is terrible, and coaches who come from there are garbage and trash, and, Wilfred Nancy... I'm not, based on the results that Nancy got, I'm not going to stand up and try to argue with you about that. But I will say that if you are even a little bit intelligent and a little bit understand this game and how complicated it can be and how context matters, you will look at those numbers and go, wow, that's really bad luck for Wilfred Nancy. And it's really wrong to throw everything that's happened at Celtic over the course of the last month, it's been a month, at the feet of Wilfred Nancy. Really, really, really wrong and unfair to him, even if it doesn't mean he should have kept his job.
Before we get out of here for the day, I want to shout out to our newest members from over the weekend, The Soccer Enjoyer, $2 Soccer, and Eric Allen. And then a big thank you to Bob for the super thanks during the show. Appreciate all the support.
Can I say something? I see a couple of people. We have utilized a tool here on our broadcast platform to go vertical for Instagram. I believe this also means you can watch it vertical on YouTube, but it's confusing some people where the chat is now over my face or something and they can't I don't know if it's just a matter of going back to a landscape with your phone, guys, like going back horizontal with your phones. If you're watching on a phone, if you're watching on a computer, I have no idea about that. We'll try to get you some information as to why it looks the way it does, because I know people want to participate.
Yeah, so right now there are two feeds. There's the regular horizontal, and then now there's the additional vertical. Maybe you guys clicked on the vertical. Hopefully that's the issue, and it's not something larger, because we did something like this on Friday, and we didn't get any comments, so we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something going on with the way the chat is being displayed in certain places. So don't know, but we'll hopefully, we'll figure this all out together.
All right. Thank you guys for joining in, and Happy New Year to all who tuned in today and not on Friday. Thanks to all the new subscribers, all of our MK Ultras, and Bob for the super thanks. And we will be back on Wednesday for Jason's hopefully final episode in Puerto Rico. Until next time, everybody, enjoy your soccer.